Hello and welcome. My name is Nate Kap, and thank you for your time and your attention. This presentation has a lot of advanced material, and I just want to let everyone know that right out of the gate so there's no surprises. But I do believe that no matter where you're at in consciousness, if you stay for the whole presentation and really soak in what I'm trying to say, I think at the very least, you'll walk away with something very valuable to think about or contemplate. And before I go any further, I want to give a big thank you to Will Keller, Chris Jansen, and Leslie Powers for inviting me to the Trivium Freedom Under Natural Law 3 conference to give my Oculus presentation. You guys are awesome, and I really do appreciate all your efforts, and I really appreciate all the efforts of all the speakers as well. Now, one thing to keep in mind is there's absolutely no way that I can cover the entirety of the topic that I'm going to be covering today. So please don't expect me to cover every single detail or make every single important point. It's just not realistic in an hour's time, okay? But you can go to cubbyhole.com, start at podcast number 1, work your way forward, and really dive deep and find lots of very valuable knowledge, including the knowledge of what I'm talking about today, okay? And in this presentation, you're not going to find anything new, but possibly and more than likely, it's going to be new to your experience, okay? So what I'm trying to convey and give to the world is a unique expression that I've put together showing how one symbol, one very ancient symbol, can have so much valuable knowledge stored within it. And I don't mean that literally, but as you go through this presentation, I think you're going to really start to understand what I mean by this. So the topics that I'm going to be covering today are the symbol, what is a symbol, what is the Oculus, and then I'm going to briefly get into separation and then dive deep into the symbol known as the circled dot, and then get into the art of distilling, knowledge and symbol, and then briefly cover the Most High and the cone symbolism. And then I'm going to get into what I refer to as the spire path and then natural law. And I hope that you guys will just really pay attention to the ideas because I'm going to be moving very quickly through a lot of this material, okay? And you can always go back and, listen after you hear this for the first time, okay? So what is a symbol? And I think this is the most simplest definition for what a symbol is, which is to compare one thing with another. So a symbol is considered to be any sign, graphic, emblem, or visual expression that makes it possible to identify something by comparing and contrasting its form to another, making it possible to configure and communicate a particular language which may be drawn out by the understanding of the knowledge associated with it. Okay, so as you can see, these three symbols are all similar but all different. So what's similar about them? Well, they're all round, they're circular, and they have a fixed part in the middle, or a fixed center part that brings your eye towards the middle. Okay, so this is about understanding that once we understand the similarities, then we can start to understand the differences. And obviously the differences, you can see that very clearly. One on the left is the zodiac wheel, right? And then the one in the center is just the circle and the dot. And then the one on the right is the toroidal donut shape, three-dimensional shape. Okay, so they all have different knowledge associated with them, right? So if they have different knowledge, then the way that we learn the language of symbolism is to see what is similar about them and then start to understand what is similar in the knowledge, okay? What brings them together, and then what differentiates them in the knowledge as well, what makes them different from each other, okay? So once we start to learn that, then we start to understand this language. Now, a symbol is neither good nor evil. Okay, so we really got to get this out of our heads because too many people believe that symbols can be good or evil, good or bad. Okay, and that's just not the case. That's not true. A symbol is a bookkeeping device. Okay, especially a good symbol or an ancient symbol, because an ancient symbol, just like you see here with this Illuminati eye, or what people say is the evil eye or all-seeing eye, this eye is way more ancient than what's on the back of the dollar bill, the US dollar bill. Okay, this is about understanding the trivium, what the whole conference is about. Okay, but more importantly, it's about understanding that a symbol has, especially an ancient symbol like this one, has heritage stored in it. Okay, so it has a lot of history to it. It has a lot of information over the years, but also universally. Okay, timeless information. All right. Now, what is an Oculus?
You have 16 shots per.
Nope, not that one. Now, an Oculus VR is an inversion proxy material based version of what the real Oculus is. Okay, so it's important to understand what the Oculus is in comparison to the VR Oculus. Okay, because the VR Oculus can actually help us understand the Oculus, because the VR Oculus is like the fake version of what the true Oculus is. So if you're not familiar, the Oculus VR gaming system is something that you put on your head where you can't see anything except for the world that is projected in the Oculus world, the Oculus game. And so you see a whole bunch of things that are going on that other people who are not wearing the Oculus, they can't see that. Okay, so you're seeing a hidden world, right? Because you're in this space and you're seeing things that aren't really there. They're being projected, all right? And that's important because that helps us understand this idea of what the true Oculus is. So what is the true Oculus? Well, the definition, Oculus comes from the Latin eye, which is, the one eye, the single eye, the mind's eye, okay, which then becomes occultare, which then becomes the occult, or which is the occult, which means to hide, to conceal, or to keep secret, okay? So the Oculus, the eye, is used to see the occult, the hidden, right? The hidden forces in nature, okay? That which is not seen. But how do you see that with the Oculus? Well, the Oculus is what brings light in. And I'm going to really explain what I mean by this. So the Oculus brings light in. Well, what is light when it comes to, our mind? It's knowledge. Knowledge. When we take in knowledge, that is light, especially the understanding of that knowledge. And so the Oculus is used to understand the occult, the unseen, that which is concealed. Okay? So the more light that you bring to the eye, the more that you'll understand the occult. It's important to understand that literally an eye can only allow light in because light is a penetrative force, right? So darkness can't enter darkness, but, the eye receives light. Light penetrates the darkness within the eye, okay? And when the light comes through the eye, especially sunlight, it's nourishing, right? But any type of light is information, and the eye reads that information, and it's also very reflective, okay? So the architecture definition of Oculus is a circular opening, especially one at the apex of a dome, Okay. Now, a dome is literally any rounded vault of a structure with a circular base. And as you can see on this graph or this picture of this eye, you have the cornea. The cornea is that dome shape on the tip of the eye. And most people don't know that they actually have this little dome shape around their iris, which is the color of their eye. Okay. So this is like, it's a little, not only a protection layer, the cornea, but also it is what, magnifies everything in the way that we're able to see the world. Okay. So this is about understanding that light comes through that little area where there's black, right? So where the iris is opening, the folds of the iris are opening to allow light into that black, which is part of understanding the lens that filters the light, the information. And then, the optical nerve is what takes in that information and sends that information to the brain to process that information. Okay. So this is about understanding that this dome on the tip of the eye is the oculus. All right. And this is an oculus in nature. Okay. This isn't something that man built, but man did build structures from this idea, okay? Whether anyone understands that or not, because, human beings love to imitate nature. That's how we learn nature, okay? So here's an actual man-made oculus structure known as the Pantheon in Rome, Italy. And this is a dome shape with a small circular window opening at the apex top of this structure. Now, this is actually a photo that I took within this dome, and the point is to understand this idea of the dome shape letting light in, and it's a timekeeper. Okay, it's a timekeeper for the day, and it's a timekeeper for the year. Okay, to understand the time of the day and the time of the year. And that's very important, because if this is an imitation from nature, where man created this dome, being inspired by nature, and it's a timekeeper, well, it's the same thing with our eyes. Okay, our eyes are also timekeepers, because our eyes are letting light in to let us know what time of the day it is, or, naturally, or what time of the year it is, naturally. Okay. So we really have to understand that. Now, this isn't rounded at the base, and it has an octagonal, vaulted dome shape. But I'm sharing it because not only is it important to recognize this shape as similar to the oculus structure, but the story that is painted on the walls at the top, on the ceiling, are dead on with what I'm sharing today. This is the Cathedral of St. Mary of the Flower in Florence, Italy, and this is also a photo that I snapped. But if you give a quick study of the biblical story within this art called the Last Judgment, and it's by the artists Vasari and Zuccari, you'll notice the ring of fire at the bottom rim of the painting, okay, where it's more red, right? And as you follow up towards the center of the painting, all the way to the apex window, you'll see there's an evolution in man. All right. So that's really, really important to understand, because it's about going towards the center, or towards the light. And one thing I want to really make very clear here is that, these cathedrals and churches are separate from the institutions. Okay. They're separate from the people that, whether the institutions and the people have, done something horrible or not, the church itself is a book. It is information. It is a symbol. These are structures preserving information that help human beings who have the eyes to see. Okay. And we have to understand, or you don't have to have the eyes to see. It's talking directly to your subconscious. Okay. But the point is that if these cathedrals or churches are burned or destroyed, it's a form of book burning. Okay. So just, really keep that in mind. Now, why is the human species so divided? Okay, so think about that ring of fire. And when we understand the principle of mentalism and realize that, whatever has manifested in the earthly domain first had to start in the mind, right? So if we truly want to understand why we are so divided, then the knowledge of the mind is where we must go find the answers, right? That makes the most sense, right? So I'm not going to go too far into this, but we have to understand this internal separation that's going on within us, all right? So pay attention to the symbolism too, because you have the dot on the left and the circle on the right, and the circle is associated with the sacred feminine right brain, and the dot is associated with the sacred masculine left brain, okay? So this is what it looks like when the brain hemispheres are separate, which is the result of ignorance, laziness, and apathy towards truth. Okay, ignorance is willfully refusing truth. Laziness is being too lazy to look into truth, and apathy is no care for truth. Okay, and this is where the bulk of humanity really truly is. And this is what causes manifested separation, where we see all these different divides all over the world. And this is also what causes obedience to man's law, man's authority. Do whatever man says, believe in government and believe in the state and, believe in man as God on earth. Okay? And this is what generates chaos as a result. Now, the goal is to get out of this ring of fire. Okay? The goal is to find balance. And a lot of people know this deep down. Actually, I'd say pretty much everyone on this planet knows deep down that balance is the goal. But we're all so divided, we don't really understand that. So balance is the result of working on the aspects of consciousness of both hemispheres. Okay? So as you see at the bottom, the dot and the circle combining to the point within the circle. It's about, bringing the point, finding the point, bringing that point back home to the circle. And this is what causes a marriage. So bringing the left brain, by working on the left brain aspects, science, reading, and logic, and there's a longer list than that, working on those hemispheres and working on that hemisphere and those aspects, and then working on the aspects of the sacred feminine brain, which is intuition, creativity, open-mindedness, and the list goes on. But working on all those aspects is what's going to generate more balance in your life and therefore in the world, okay? So we are the change that we wish to see. If we want to see more balance, we're going to have to balance ourselves, right? So this is what generates higher cognitive order, by learning who we are and finding out where we're imbalanced. If we're too much in the right brain, well, we need to work on the left brain aspects. If we're too far in the left brain, well, we have to work on the right brain aspects to harmonize and bridge them together, okay? To find the green energy, the middle frequency energy, all right? Now, the concept of the pure form of the circled dot is ultimate. And from what I understand, this symbol is the only symbol that has been discovered by, universally by archaeologists and anthropologists, meaning, that it is, truly the most universal symbol within all esoteric systems and mystery traditions and basically all civilizations, all the way back into antiquity and all the way up into the modern day. So all through the ages. There's a lot that goes into this symbol, okay? So keep in mind that the themes that we need to keep in mind are balance, equilibrium, centeredness, present moment awareness, wholeness, marriage or wedding, most high, dark to light, out to in, fear to love, slavery to freedom, and the list goes on, okay? So as I go through these slides, I want you to really use your pattern recognition to see all the similar themes going on within, all the different symbols that are associated or similar to this symbol, okay? Because, this is about finding the overarching message, the center of this presentation, what's the point? Learning the dualistic components of the circled dot is key to arriving with a deeper understanding when the two are unified into one or a whole. So it's about understanding the one by understanding the two. So in this case, it's about understanding the circled dot by understanding the dot and the circle separate dualistically. And I'm going to start with electromagnetism. Now, electromagnetism is electricity and magnetism working in unison as one, as a whole. And it's one of the 4 fundamental forces in nature that governs atoms and molecules. Okay, so it's about bringing the dot and the circle in unison. And then there's the torus. And the torus or toroidal field, this is basically a 2-dimensional form. The circle dot is a 2-dimensional symbol for the toroidal field. Okay, so the whole literally looks like a hole, right? Phonetically, it's the same as HOLE, right? But it is the whole. And then you have the center of the whole, okay, the point. And so when the circle and dot are together in the 3-dimensional realm, you have the toroidal field. And this is electromagnetism, which means that, if you look at all the planets, look at all the living beings on this planet, they all have toroidal fields. Everyone has a toroidal field and they all interact with each other. It is part of understanding the unseen forces in nature. Okay, and there's a lot that goes into that. Now, alchemy, I think, is one of the most important aspects or traditions or sciences associated with this circled dot because it's universal. Okay, so it goes with this circled dot perfectly because it's about coming out of darkness and into light. That's what alchemy is. True spiritual alchemy is about becoming enlightened. Okay, it's about true education. All right, because even the etymology of the word alchemy is chem, which means out of darkness. Okay, and what is out of darkness means into light. That's what it means. Okay, and there's a lot more that goes into that. And it's also about understanding how a caterpillar turns into a butterfly. I think that's one of the most beautiful, symbolic, organic ways to describe alchemy in nature. Okay, something that we can actually see, because that's what we are. We start out as a caterpillar on the ground, and then once we raise in consciousness, we do become, or we have the potential to become the butterfly and fly and get to, experience a very beautiful spiritual, life. Now, marriage is the unification or wedding, the wedlock between the circle and the dot, the feminine, the sacred feminine, and the sacred masculine. Okay, and when the sacred masculine penetrates the sacred feminine, you have what's known as the marriage. And this is spiritual, of course. All right. So this is the spiritual alchemical marriage. And the circle dot also represents the all. The all is everything. Everything is connected with all that is. Nothing can't exist without something, and something can't exist without nothing. So all really is something and nothing. And nothing really is something when you really understand what nothing is. The bullseye is probably tied to this circle dot more than anything. And I think it's because it's so simple. Because you have, just think about the dartboard, for instance. If the dartboard didn't have that little bullseye in the center, it would just be a circle, right? And then it's like, well, what do you aim for? It's aimless. You don't have anything to aim for. But the center or the point would be the target. That's something you have to aim for. But if you don't have a circumference area to, be able to focus in on that point, you don't really have anything to truly aim with. So the point without the circle, it's an aim, but it's, you don't have any distance in between, because that wouldn't make any sense. You can't just start at the target, right? So you have to bring them together, and now you have a bullseye. You have something to aim for, okay? And the circle dot also represents present moment awareness, which is found by not living in the future and not living in the past, right? Because it's about living in the now, because that's all there truly is, being present. Now, these are analogous symbols of the circle dot that we really have to understand and how they work together. Okay, so the pure form of the circle dot is in the two-dimensional row. So you have the two-dimensional row at the top and the three-dimensional row at the bottom. And the pure form of the circle dot as a cone is with the point raised. Okay, that's very crucial to understand. And then all the way to the right, we have the ancient symbol of the spiral, the two-dimensional ancient symbol of the spiral, and then the three-dimensional cone version of the spiral, right? So it's analogous. It's the same as the first row. Now, when you merge those two together, you are bridging. The spiral is the bridge from the circle to the dot, okay? That's very key to understand, but they're both saying basically the same thing. The word distill is very important because the word distill means to extract the essential elements of. It means to refine, okay? And I even say to condense or compact into. So this is about distilling knowledge of symbol into pure form. And I'm going to just show you guys the symbolic way of distilling knowledge into pure form. Okay, so I'm going to start with the bullseye. Okay, now I'm going to, I already shared a little bit of the knowledge with the bullseye, but I'm going to share a little bit more. So the bullseye is one of the most important symbols that anyone could ever deeply understand exoterically and esoterically because it's the aim for the center that is so key to understand, both spiritually and physically. All right. So it's about aiming for the centrally defined area. All right. Exteriorly and interiorly. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but you have a little bit of knowledge and then you distill it, right? And then to the bottom right is the spiral symbol. And it is a spirit symbol. And it's a spiritual development symbol. And it is a very extremely ancient symbol. And it has been used in many different cultures. And this symbol is also known as the ancient symbol for the stairway to heaven, or it can also be the stairway to hell. Okay, and I'm going to really get into what I mean by that a little later, but you have a little bit of knowledge and you distill it. Okay. Then we have the ancient Masonic point within a circle and bordered by two perpendicular lines that you see on the right and the left side. Okay, this symbol is the bond and bridge back into antiquity. It represents the creator and the conception of unity and eternity and righteousness of the creator. It is the tracing tool of geometry of ourselves and the universe. Okay, and there's so much that goes into this symbol, all right? But we have a little bit of knowledge and we distill it. And then there is the flower of life, and a lot of people are familiar with this. This is the flower of life symbol, which is a sacred geometry communication instrument with nature. And because it represents creation, it also therefore represents the blueprint that we use to trace ourselves back to the original singularity. Okay, this image literally started with a point within a circle, and there's actually 19 circles overlapping each other to create this, magical flower of life. So there's a little bit of knowledge and you distill it. Now here's the exoteric knowledge versus esoteric knowledge wheel. Okay, this is about discovering truth, which requires an inner standing and an outer standing, an internal esoteric understanding of knowledge and an exoteric understanding of that same knowledge, especially in regards to self. So it's about comparative religion, all right? So we have a little bit of knowledge of this and we can distill it. And then the last symbol is the Wheel of Fortune card from the tarot deck, also known as the Wheel of Truth, which is, you find a lot of truth discovered in this symbol. But it's a deep moral symbol. And it is, it's also a symbol of ignorance when we really truly understand how to use it. But anyway, we have a little bit of knowledge and we distill it. Now, I just want to show you a few more, and because of time restraints, I'm just not going to be able to really, go through all these as much as I want to, but we're going to start with time. Time is the error in time. And so the more that we learn all this information, the more we're going to start to understand how we are slaves to time. So a little bit of knowledge, now it's distilled. We have the zodiac, which is all about understanding astronomy, astrology, and astrotheology. A little bit of knowledge, distill it. Then King Arthur's Round Table, it's about finding truth. A little bit of knowledge, distilled. Saturn is associated with the god of time, Kronos. A little bit of knowledge, distilled. This is what people know as the swastika, but it's also known as the bent cross. But if we really want to understand very ancient Egyptian stellar mythos with the nature god Horus, moving or transitioning into the solar mythos, we're going to have to understand this symbol, a little bit of knowledge, distilled. And then this symbol is also known as the Most High in a certain phase of the solar mythos in ancient Egypt. We have a little bit of knowledge and we distill it. Now, this is the most beautiful of all circled dots because it is what we find in nature, something we can see if we look right in the mirror. We can see this beautiful, perfect circle, underneath the cornea, the iris, the outer edges of the iris. And what is it that our eye teaches us about this circled dot? Well, our eye, the iris, the folds, focus in on the center, the point, right? Because it's about finding clarity. It's about understanding that what is the point of all this? And the more that we start to bring more light into our Oculus, our eye, the more that we will have more focus in life, the more that we will understand. And that's what our physical eye can teach us. Okay, so we can learn a spiritual lesson from our physical eye because our physical eye will focus on something to help the brain understand what it is that it's looking at. Okay, so people don't understand what the point of life is. What is the point? And it's because they haven't discovered the point. They have not discovered the purpose. Okay, purpose is the point. And we can discover this through knowledge. Okay, it takes a great deal of care to find the point. Okay, now I created this because of, I wanted to show the inversion of, or, the spiritual version of the telescope. So this is the internal scope. Okay, so the telescope looks out into the universe, and the internal scope looks in to the universe, the internal universe, right? And this is about having an understanding of the science of the circled dot. So it's about seeing with the pine cone, the eye, right? The Oculus, right? Seeing the Oculus, seeing the reflection of the Oculus of the universe, the circled dot, and seeing the central theme, the central light in all of these traditions and all of these symbols. And, the more that we study the central theme, the more that we're going to see the whole thing. And that's very important because it's about, illuminating the eye. That's what that Illuminati eye symbol actually means. Okay. So in green language, the word cone means see with one. Okay. To see with one. It's because it's the cone, the pine cone, to see with one, right? So you're able to not only see with one, but also see with the one, right? That's what it's about. Now, this is a symbol of the Most High, and the star at the top really is the symbolic version of the Most High. And a lot of people know this to be the higher power, God, Allah, Yahweh, or the Creator. All right. So it's where everything merges to a point, to find the point, to find the Creator, to find that which is the Most High. 20,000 plus years ago, in the solar phase of the solar mythos, was the god, the solar nature god, Ra. And Ra was considered the Most High. And this circled dot is considered to be a solar symbol associated with Ra. Also, there is this idea, when you are showing how to understand ego and solipsism, I think it's proper to show how being self-centered or selfish, symbolically, you are at the center, right? So the ego wants, the darker side of the ego that wants to control the extant, not the good side of the ego that wants to, protect us. But the ego that says it's all about me, 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 that is the selfish part of, this is the selfish desires of the self to control everyone else in order to get what you want for yourself, whether, anyone else suffers or not. That's what this is about. And this is a claim to the Most High. Whether anyone understands that or not, that's what it is. Okay? And this is the, the selfish version of that. And solipsism is the same thing. Solipsism goes hand in hand with ego because it's all about, well, my mind is all that exists, and therefore I don't care if anyone else suffers because everybody else is just a figment of my imagination, and therefore I'm the Most High. That's what they're really saying, and they don't even know it. People who take on this position. All right. Then there's the Most High subversive symbolism. One of the ones that we know best is the target symbol or the target logo. And this is, the claim to the Most High as far as, the best place to shop to get your, food and clothes and all that. So this is directly targeting the subconscious, pun intended, to tell you in your subconscious that this is a claim to the Most High. Come here and shop at the Most High. And here's a time lapse of the celestial North Pole that I think is so awesome because it really shows this circled dot in a way that, we really can't see unless, we sit there for hours and really watch and observe, which, no human being has time for that these days. But we do have technology that helps us slow down a little bit and see things in a way that, is so magical. And this has been known in the ancient world to be symbolic of the Most High because the celestial North Pole constellation, being the little bear, it never set below the horizon in the northern hemisphere, especially. Okay, so that is very key to pay attention to because this is something that we can actually observe. And this is, just from our perception on Earth. But it's about understanding that fixed point. Now, the cone and pole together is very, very crucial to understand because this is about understanding the one single pole, the one, which has a north side and a south side. That's where we get North Pole and South Pole. So when you think of the hemispheres of the earth or hemispheres of the brain, it's so important to understand how they connect. So you have the masculine at the top, at the point, at the apex, and then the feminine is at the bottom. Okay. So the maypole dance is one way we can really understand this. So the maypole dance is a fertility ritual, also known as Beltane or May Day. And it's rooted in paganism as a festival that celebrates the beginning of summer. So you have all these people that are going in this circumambulation dance around this pole with these the ribbons, and they're wrapping the ribbons around this pole. And so the people would be associated with the sacred feminine dancing around the masculine pole, the sacred masculine pole. And here is a different type of pole dancing. Again, it's a female energy dancing on a masculine pole energy. And then this is the Interpol, the International Criminal Police Organization. And inter means grave, and pole is the obvious, as the pole of the North and South Pole. And I'm not going to go deep into this, but it's just important to understand this, to see their symbol. All right. Now, this is really interesting. This is symbolic, of course. Okay. This isn't, don't think of this as being real, but just think of this as the visible universe from the northern hemisphere of Earth. Okay. Because you're looking straight up to the North Pole star being, what is up, right? Which is Polaris. And then if you think about, we're in this solar system, right? And at the middle of the solar system is the sun. So this is about understanding the Father being the top, the Most High, and then the Mother being the Holy Ghost, the invisible, okay, the substance, the glue, the waters of the whole universe, holding it all together with the seed, the sun at the center, okay, that which can grow, okay, the child in the womb, okay, the bindu, the drop. It even looks like a teardrop or just a drop of water, right? So that is crucial to understand, to see that, okay? And again, this is from, the North Hemisphere. But now, also think about this. This is considered the living room, okay? This is one room, okay? The universe is one room, and it's living. Everything in it is living. Now, what else do we have in a living room in Christmas, typically, especially in the United States? A Christmas tree, right? A three-dimensional Christmas tree. The tinsel is the spiral, the bulbs are the planets, the stars are the lights, and the star at the top is the celestial North Pole star, right? And then you have the two-dimensional overhead view of the tree as well, the bird's eye view. And I want to quickly go over this. This is really important because this is about understanding the occult nature languages. So the language of the birds is the bird's eye view. So if you're looking over a cone and looking down, it looks like the circled dot, okay? And also think of Horus, the hawk, the bird, as the Most High, especially in the stellar mythos. It's a bird's eye view. It's about understanding the alignment to that, okay? To be aligned to the Most High, all right? That's so crucial to understand. And another way to understand this is through green language, which is heart-based intelligence, which is a balanced green frequency, because it's about aligning to nature, okay? Nature is about understanding the alignment to Most High. Now, this is just an AI generated image from Midjourney, which is really cool because I told it to combine, the Christmas tree with that solar, or with the visible universe, and this is what it generated. So pretty awesome what that system can do. Now, this is a really silly movie. I actually just watched it recently just to refresh my memory, but it has a lot of esotericism, but it's not too deep and it's not dark. It's very light, but it definitely has a lot of the knowledge of this cone symbolism and this higher frequency. And it's something that I will be explaining more in the cubbyhole. Now, in many traditions and lore, a conical hat is worn or seen as a symbol for the connection of the head to the Most High. Unless, of course, we're talking about a dunce cap. But Here is a wizard. This is an archetype of a wizard. Of course, a wizard can be a woman or a man, and a wizard can also be good or evil, but typically a wizard is a magician who is a master of the self, which brings light into the world by aligning to natural law and teaching natural law. Okay, so that's the light side of wizardry. And then, of course, the dark side of wizardry would be sorcery. And then here is the gnome. A lot of people are familiar with these little guys. They are spiritual gardeners, meaning they are symbols for keeping the internal garden clean from darkness and evil. They are the guardians of the self. Okay, so if we look at the gnome name, we see that it's spelled G and then the word gnome, and phonetically it's saying genome, and that G is also silent as well. That's really important to keep in mind too. But if you look up the word genome or genome, it means the entire set of DNA instructions found in a single cell. So it's intelligence. And Santa Claus comes from the North Pole. There's a whole story behind that, whole allegorical story. And witches or Wiccans, they can be male or female, and they could be good or bad, okay? But the point is they have a pointy hat, cone hat. And there's a lot more to that. I think we're all familiar with these cone hats, and if you're not familiar, this is a supremacist group of light-skinned individuals who believe that they are the most high in the human race. And therefore, because of this, they have committed some really awful atrocities among those who are darker in skin complexion, who want to, live around them. Okay, so very important to see that connection. All right, so this is a darker side of the cone hat. And, this is the Ku Klux Klan, in case anybody didn't know. But, just think about something for a second. Do these people, do they look like spiritual people to you? Do they seem like they understand spirituality, true spirituality? Spirituality is all about the expansion of consciousness, right? But it is the science of objective morality and the laws of nature. It's not based on perception. It's not based on dogmatic belief. Okay? So, how can we further understand what true spirituality is? Well, I think it's really important to break down this word spiritual because I think it's so misunderstood, and I think the definitions are very poor that we find on the internet especially. I have heard people break this down pretty well, but I'm going to break it down a little bit more, okay? So the word spiritual can be broke down in two compound words: spirit and ritual, or spire and ritual. So the word spire comes from the Old English, a sprout, shoot, spike, blade, tapering stalk of grass. Okay? And it is a spiral or coil. And then it comes from the Latin spirare, or spirit, to breathe. That's what spirit means, to breathe. And then the architecture word, spire, means the steeply pointed pyramidal or conical termination to a skyscraper, church, or tower. So where the structure of a building tapers off into a point, that's a spire. Okay? And then here is three definitions under ritual. So a ritual means a set of actions that are conducted routinely in the same manner. It also means a sequence of activities dealing with gestures, words, symbols, and objects performed in a sequestered place and according to set sequence. And then the third definition states the performance with or taking part in something. Okay, so spiritual means routinely taking part in an unfoldment towards a fixed point. Now, really keep that in mind, okay? And here is what I refer to as the spire path, which is a way in which one uses knowledge of the point within a circle and spiral symbol in conjunction with each other in order to correspond and understand the unfolding path of natural law. Okay? So this is what reveals more truth to us. Okay? This is symbolically what reveals more truth to us. And what's so important about this conjunction of the circle, dot, and spiral is when you think of the spiral staircase. The spiral staircase, if you've ever gone up a spiral staircase, when you're going up and around, you can't really see around the bend, right? And so it's an unfoldment of more stairs, which is the same as an unfoldment of more truth, okay, and more direction. All right. So we start at the base and we're rising to the top. Okay. Symbolically. Okay. And literally too. But the point is that the spiral is associated with the spiral staircase. So you're going up. And, when you think of the stairway to heaven, it's about raising in consciousness, going from the base and rising up. Or you can also go down that spiral staircase, the downward spiral, right? When we hear this phrase, the downward spiral, it means that you're going down in some way, which indicates not a good thing, okay? So it's about an unfoldment of truth, because truth is not something that you just see and you go get. It's something that unfolds. And you have to have, faith that there's going to be more steps around that bend or more truth around that bend. So it unfolds. You can't just beamline and get to the truth. Okay, you have to work your way around to get to the truth. So this is the way in which we can correspond a forward or backward symbol to our state of consciousness, and how certain things align and they don't align. So aligning our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions with, the law of nature. So this is your unique journey, and you're going to have to figure this all out on your own. But, I'm just trying to show you how this symbol is akin to, like a moral compass, because that's what it is. The spire path is akin to the moral compass. If you ever wanted to understand what the moral compass is, this is it. So here is a graph that I created to help us understand this spire path a little better. And this is all about the moral direction, okay, that we take. And in the middle, we see natural law as the point, the fixed element. And then underneath that is the spiral, which is akin to alignment or lack thereof. And then we have free will at the bottom as the circle, okay, the random element. So we, on both sides, we see the circle dot, and we see these arrows, these spirals that either go in on the left or go out on the right. So on the right, we have the aimless path to natural law, which is going away from the point, getting away from the point, the lack of alignment, right? And, the circle is the free will, the choice, the unlimited choice that we have. So we have a choice to go away from the point and live aimlessly through life, or we can have an aim in life to aim towards natural law on the left, right? So we can go towards that point. And we have the aim. Natural law is the aim. And as we spiral, go up those spiral staircase, where we have this aim towards something, towards a fixed point, because natural law is fixed, right? So then on the right, we have the arrow going away from the point, which means off the path. And then to the left is the middle path, to go on the middle path, because the middle path is the balanced path. It's the fixed path. It's the path towards what is correct and true and right, which is natural law. And then on the right is the arrow is going away from the point, which is out of control. To be out of control is to move away from the point. To move in control is to move in the point, into the point, towards the point, okay, to have control. And, when you think about this, when you're trying to make a point, you're trying to get as close to the point as possible, because if you get away from the point, you're losing people, right? On the right, you have the spiral moving away from the point, meaning devolution, to devolve as a human species, or to devolve as the self, to stagnate. Or we can evolve by moving towards the point, to align to natural law. Moving away from the point creates chaos. Moving towards the point creates order. It generates order. To move away from the point means missing the mark, which is to sin. Sin means missing the mark. So to move away from the mark. To move towards the point is to be moral. Okay, to hit the mark, to align to the mark, to align to natural law. To move away from the point, to move away from natural law means to obey masters, to do whatever you're told, to, be obedient to man's law. To move towards the point, towards natural law, is to be without masters, anarchon, to be without masters, to be without rulers. To move away from the point is slavery. This is what generates slavery. To move towards the point is what generates freedom. Okay? So I think you get the point, right? I hope so, because I'm really being as clear as I could possibly be and as simple as I could possibly be. All right? And the more that we study this, the more we'll understand it. So, natural law, if you're not familiar, you should be by now. Natural law is the immutable conditions of reality that govern the consequences of human behavior. It is the science of morality, objective morality, and the unfolding crux of the occult. So learning the science of natural law is what helps anyone truly begin to understand the point of truth. So what is truth? Truth is the central religion, meaning it is binding. So it is the binding principle of reality. It's singular, and that which is. It is the central point of absolute light. Okay? So on the left, we have choice. And on the right, we have choice, because the circle represents choice. Okay? And we're trying to get to the truth, to the center, to the point. Right? So attending the journey towards truth through willful, laborious efforts of taking in lots of knowledge and coming to an understanding of that knowledge, and then, producing wisdom, speaking wisdom. That is what generates growth when we align to truth. And if we stagnate, if we make the choice to stagnate and resist truth, it is about the avoiding the journey towards truth through like I said earlier, ignorance, laziness, and apathy. No care for truth, too lazy to look at any type of truth, and willfully refusing truth. And so, as you can see, these are the results: going in the direction away from truth or the direction towards truth. Growth or stagnation? What's it going to be? Or freedom and slavery? What is freedom? Freedom is the ability to do anything you want, as long as another's freedom isn't destroyed. Very simple. So what is the opposite of that? It's slavery. Slavery is the inability of freedom due to robbery of property and obedience to man's law and mind control. Okay? So freedom generates as a result of a society that moves in a moral direction. And the opposite of that is slavery. Slavery generates as a result of a society that moves away from a moral direction. And the question is, what direction is the right direction? I think anybody in their right mind knows what the answer is. So what truly is a right direction when it comes to human freedom? Moral absolutism or objective morality. So right down the center, again, we have natural law being the fixed element, which is represented by the point. And then below that is the spiral symbol, which represents alignment or lack thereof to natural law. And then below that is free will, the random element, which represents the circle, which represents the infinite choices that a human being can take. So we have a moral direction or an immoral direction. So we have to understand that a right direction, a moral direction in human behavior, is any action that doesn't rob another's freedom. Any action that a human being wants to take that does not violate someone else's rights or does not hurt or harm another sentient being. Okay, this is what generates harmony. It is the correct way. It is the moral way to go, the moral direction. Okay, so the opposite of that would be the immoral direction, okay, away from natural law, which means we have to understand that a wrong direction in human behavior is any robbery of another's freedom, any taking of someone else's rights, any form of violation that hurts another sentient being. Okay, so we have to understand that the 7 transgressions against natural law are the immoral, wrong directions. Okay, so they're all forms of robbery. The 7 forms of robbery, which are, robbing someone of their life, which is murder, robbing someone of their sexual consent, which is rape, robbing someone of their well-being, which is assault, robbing someone of their place where they live, which is trespassing. Robbing someone of their possessions, that's stealing. Robbing someone of their ability to make a choice through the threat of violence, that's coercion. Robbing someone of their ability to make an informed decision because they've been lied to. They've had the truth kept from them. They've been deceived. Okay, this is willfully lying. Okay, so it's all about understanding the direction, okay? The direction that causes disharmony, which is immoral, and the direction that causes harmony, which is moral. So as we act moral, we go towards the point of life. We start to understand purpose. Now, as far as I understand, the circled dot glyph has its true inception in the stellar mythos some 150 to 300,000 years ago, as the cone-shaped mountain with the dot being the equivalent of the eye. So the point within the circle being, the center of the circumpolar enclosure or the center point of the north sky, what we know as Polaris, the North Pole star, it is said that this is the primordial all-seeing eye in astro mythology. It's also known as the Great Judge. So the pole star was recognized symbolically as the eye on the summit or spire of the universal mountain. And it's also known as Heaven's Eye Mountain. So the star or dot at the summit was also the ideograph for the earlier Horus, who was the god of the pole star north in the stellar mythos. Okay. Now, what I really want to get at here is the quote by Albert Churchward, one of the most, greatest Masonic authors of the ancient Egyptian mysteries and sciences, who said that this eye or this dot or pole star, it therefore became a symbol of the eternal because apparently from the perspective of Earth, especially in the North Hemisphere, it never changed with time. The pole star never set. So it was looked at symbolically as the earliest type of supreme intelligence which gave the law, aka universal law or natural law, which was unerring. It is the unmistaken law. It's just and it's true. And it became a standpoint in the heavens for the mind of man to rest on at the center and radiate to the circumference. So it align with this point within a circle is to align to the Most High or law, okay, natural law. And to align with natural law is to not err, to not mistaken, to be true, and to do what's right, to not break nature's law. That's what that means. So love is the answer, right? But take it a step further, and agape is the highest form of love and care by doing what it takes to be free, which is correct and true. So the point is, I hope that you got the point, and I hope you're inspired, and I really hope that your Oculus has been filled with at least a little bit of light today. Thank you for your time and your attention, and please go to cubbyhole.com and listen to the Cubbyhole podcast, where I really go a lot deeper into this topic. Also, you can check out my show Outcasting, which can be found under Nate of the Cubbyhole website. And also, make sure to catch my follow-up presentation to Earth Brain Part 1, titled Earth Brain 2, The Sacred Trace, which I'll be giving at the free online Seed 5 Metamorphosis Conference coming up this September 23rd through the 24th of this year, 2023. And more info on this conference can be found at seedtruth.com. Thank you.